Because the one thing technology or the Bahamas growing has taught us that some of the same times that we talk about were so good wasn't really that good.
True.
And so let us not, we have more churches now than we've ever had. In my family, and this is what I like to start. My mother's father, I never met him. Wasn't nothing that she did.
Wow.
My father had brothers and sisters that were also his first cousins. So how good could our society have been? And everyone came from that society. There were church members, there were politicians, there were other businessmen. So let's not kid ourselves.
They think all this happened just now.
Exactly. Let us be honest. Because our children can count, you know. Our great-grandchildren who are 13, and they see the difference between their great-grandma and their mother's ages 13 or 14, it's hard to lecture them. Now, we know the times were different.
Right.
That do not mean that we don't have a problem today.
Right. Good point.
But we could have two things going on at the same time. And how do we get back to that point that we would like to see? It starts with the family.
Yeah.
It starts with the family. Simple things that sound so foreign. Having dinner together at the dinner table and not eating in different rooms.
True.
Now
at different times.
And this one is against my mother. We heard the story of going to Grammy being a good cook. In the Lorota family, the men have always been the better cooks. So my dad would be the one to host these feasts every Sunday that will have his children and his grandchildren. And it was always a big spread. And I remember saying to him, Dad, why do you do this every Sunday? He said, I don't do this for y'all, I do this for me. Right. As you get older, you would find that you want your kids and your grandkids around you. He says, because even though you come here for 4 hours on Sunday, I sleep by myself 7 days a week. So it's therapeutic not only to those being fed, but also those who are doing it. Because I never forgot. I mean, my late father said, you know, when you age, when you're getting older, you get lonely, you know? And so when you get to this point and you see kids being busy, nobody's checking for grandma or for grandpa because everybody have their own agenda. At some point, we have to decide, what do we want? We talk about our successes, and our successes have led to some of this breakdown.
Yes.
I spent 20 years in the tourism industry. And so you have a situation with people working in the hotel. And our middle class, and I could tell you, and all of it in this room know, our middle class could be a doctor, a lawyer, a busboy, a dealer, a maid.
Yeah.
Now, if kids are going to school from 9 to 3, and both parents are working from 4 to 12, if there's no Grammy there,
right,
who is watching the kids?
Correct.
Are you bad parents because you came from a generation that did not have much, and now you're in a position to provide more from your family? So it's not anything malicious. It's just some of the things that happen, and we are paying the price now for some of our successes.
I want to bring in the Minister of National Security, because how many times, I mean, as journalists, we go on crime scenes and you talk to family members, and the first thing the mother says is, my good boy, my good son. And you're saying, well, how your good son involved in these issues? There obviously is a disconnect for people when we see crime happening. Parents traditionally probably don't know or do know and turn a deaf ear to it. I always give the example, mom gets a brand new hat, dress, and gloves for Mother's Day from her good son, but he ain't never worked. And then when he get locked up for drugs next week, you saying they got the wrong man. But how you think the dress, the hat, the gloves get paid for you to walk in church and walk up the aisle, take hands to the lady? You see? So I think we're not understanding how this culture of crime is being breathed as parents, or we're turning a deaf ear. What are you seeing, sir?
Well, Glenn, good evening, and good evening, Bahamas. I've said on a number of occasions, it was her good son when you're born, you're good. When the doctor hands you the baby, you're good. Now, what we're experiencing in this country is from birth, and sadly, to about the age of now 14 and 15, that good child that was delivered to the mother somehow has the gumption to get a gun, shoot somebody 3 times in the head, 4 times in the body, in one case expend 62 rounds to kill someone in a group. But that has happened along that road from birth to 15 years old. And so at the Ministry of National Security, when I was tasked with this job by the Prime Minister, I worked with him as a lawyer, and he's the type of fella, your instructions in writing. I'm giving you this job to do the following. And that's daunting because if you don't do it, he's sort of fellow who say you didn't do this. And it's holding people accountable. And that is what isn't happening in our families. I'm somebody who would say there is no ideal family. When people come before me, mothers come before me and say, I'm a single parent. By definition, you can't be a single parent because it takes 2 people to reproduce.
True.
You may be a parent who the other parent is not co-parenting with you, but you cannot be a single parent unless the other parent has died. So we need to stop that foolishness. Unless the other parent has died, there are no single parents. There are just one parent where the other parent isn't co-parenting. And so the accountability that the Prime Minister holds me to do my job is the same accountability that we have to hold our children to. Make no mistake about it. You always had illegitimacy in this country.
Yeah.
I never forget one of my first mitigations after my client was convicted. I said before 2 separate Chief Justices, oh, he is from a single mother's home, and the judge asked, so am I. And so we've had 2 Chief Justices of this country raised by mothers alone. And they had no, I wouldn't say compassion, but that submission didn't impress them. You have many different varieties of families. We always had. Back in the day, if you had a young girl, had a child, and was getting married, the child was given to an aunt who may not have had children, a female relative who might not have had children to raise, because that is what was done back in the day. And that was a different type of family. The family also has many different faiths. The joke I tell when I talk to my Anglican brethren is, the one religion that you seldom find in prison, because they say their religion, is Rastafarians. You have a whole heap of Baptists, a whole heap of Anglicans, Catholics, according to their representation as religions in the country.
Right.
So this phenomena of socialization, I like to call it, there's no particular family structure that does it. There's no particular religion that does it. It's a particular state of mind of taking personal responsibility for your actions.
Let me ask you, Minister, how are those people, the Baptists, the Catholic, the Anglicans, all that you mentioned, how are they getting phones in jail? Clint,
the Commissioner of Corrections have said repeatedly, even when the prison was locked down, they will search the day, and they display them, hundreds of phones, marijuana, and on one report, they reported a gallon of moonshine. And so you have contraband coming into the prison by corrupt staff. And we've had prison officers, correctional officers charged before the court. Now, one of the reasons when we started that I was so passionate to build this facility, this new correctional facility is one. They'll have a supermax section. That's for the fellas who need to be isolated from the rest of the population. It's steel cells, so even if you have a phone, the transmission isn't. And because how the prison is set up now, spread over a whole campus, that gives a lot of opportunity for trafficking, contraband in and out. I wouldn't like to say all of the ways, because then you might be letting somebody know a way that they did not know before. But a centralized facility, as we're proposing, with control doors, with CC camera controls, permits you to prevent this sort of trafficking. As simple as being to have a place where a correctional officer has no reason to take any bag back on the blocks improves your opportunities of preventing the entry of contraband into the facility. Persons who don't quite understand that, don't quite understand the need to build that facility. It's long overdue.
Right.
And I'll tell you something that is happening in the facility, because the task force went there last week. We have family happening in prison, you know. We have 6 men in a cell, and they form a family. And you have to, if you're living in a cell with 6 men, 23 hours a day, Monday to Friday, 24 hours a day sometimes, Saturday and Sunday. And so what we are experiencing and what we're trying to prevent is that sort of fermentation that happens. When you talk about close like family, they even shower together. That closeness that facility causes brings family values that you have to get along. There's a slop bucket in the cell because we don't have internal plumbing. And you have to operate around that with those 5 other individuals. And so when you go to the cells, when you talk to them, when they come out, that is why they have this sense of connection with those men they spent all of that time with.
So how is that even rehabilitative?
Well, that's the challenge, Clint. That is the challenge, because the 5th pillar of our crime plan is rehabilitation.
Exactly.
There are persons who, once you reach the stage of going out on the intramural scheme, you go in a dorm that's less constricting. And when you are classified to go in medium, that's a dorm. But it's still a lot of people. But the formative times are spent 6 men to a cell, 23 hours a day, no indoor plumbing, 24 hours a day on the weekend. No indoor plumbing and a slop bucket, 24 hours a day, emptied once a day. Now, family values...
That's an animal's cage.
But the whole point is this, Clint. We talk about family bonding, right? Could you imagine a young man who has not had any serious interaction in his home?
True.
For any reason, he finds himself in that circumstance. And I've said this before, Clint, a big part of our problem is recruitment happens there. Why? I'm heading a gang, say, or somewhere up there. You come to prison as a young fella, 18, 19, 20. You think somebody is going to molest you. You come in my cell, I tell you, I'm not going to let anybody fool with you. And I do that. And I smuggle a phone in, because I can do that. And I let you use it. And I smuggle some drugs in, because I can, and I give you a smoke. And I have resources, so I get you water and food. And I treat you like you are really my family.
Yeah.
And so these young men who sometimes come from circumstances that they receive no love, no attention from anybody in their family, they are delivered to a situation where they're shown love and attention. And so when he touched the road and LaRhoda offends me, I tell him, go shoot LaRhoda.
Right.
And as a human being, he should be grateful to me. And on top of that, he doesn't know if he's going to come back up there.
Wow.
So then he has to make a decision. What is he going to do? He has been joined to a family of 5 other men. And if they show him love and attention that he does not get at home, he will have a family that cares about him in his mind. You know what a gang used to tell the young fellas? If you get killed, we can give your mommy money to bury you. And they used to do that. And if you go to jail, we're going to put money on the gate. And they used to do that. And you have to tell these young men, but they telling you can get killed and go to jail. But the young men think and react to that as love. So the problem with family that we're having is at some point, we lost what the family provided, which was love, attention, and direction. And the one thing parents used to do is make you take personal responsibility for your actions. Oh, I failed the class, it's the teacher's fault. If one person passed, the parents used to say, if one person could pass, you could pass.
That's right.
So when you hear people talk about it's the educational system, how could it be when you have a school that turns out, the public schools turns out children who have 8, 9, 10 BGCSEs?
Correct.
So we have to go back, Clint, to taking personal responsibility for our actions. And the Anti-Gang Act, I think the Prime Minister warned parents. The Anti-Gang Act makes you take personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility.
Because if this child comes in your house, buy you the new dress, the new hat, don't have a job, and in a gang, that could be evidence from which you know what he is involved in. If you have him around you and you smell dope, because it smells and you could tell, you now have personal responsibility or you will be liable. And so it's to return to this country something we had back in the day. And it was taking personal responsibility for your actions.
That's amazing. I'm going to give you the final word, Minister Rhoda, particularly after we've talked with our survivor. Is there anything we can do to help? Is there anything we can do to help? Is social services looking at addressing some of these acute matters and bringing relief to people who are dealing with them?
Good question, Clint. There are a few things that's going on at social services. We're in the process of recruiting more social workers.
Yeah.
Not only for their technical skills, but we require them to be passionate. Like I don't live in a bubble. I hear the complaints, either from Rodney calling in or members of the public calling me and giving them personally. And so I've met with the management team at social services, and we're all on board in terms of staffing. The reality is this: the social worker is overworked.
Yeah.
Imagine the pit road, which may have 3 workers in there, and they're taking care of half the island. This is the reality. There are situations where stories are coming out during the pandemic. The police had to literally chase social workers out of their offices because they just lost track of time.
Wow.
16,000 files is a bit much for 3 people to deal with. This is the reality.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're a social worker, and people say, well, you know this long time. There are people who are getting degrees, and the degree that they have make them more attractive. And so I could tell you about a situation, a young man came back from Canada with 4 kids and his wife. I walked him into social service. He's got a bachelor's and master's degree in counseling. Before he was in the system to be hired, to be vetted. But before he got his call, Bahama hired him. Why? Mind you, he still wants to work because he's now at education, because they hired before social services, because that is his commitment, that he wants to help workers. Social services is putting out this newsletter that is making the public aware of the services that social services provide, because in a lot of cases,
people don't know.
People just don't know.
Don't know
Where to go. And then I'll just say this before I
They
close.
tell me to cut, and it's my boss.
No, you can't cut. In very short order, what we want to do is roll out a pilot program that I've spoken to the Prime Minister about to put like express social services offices in some of these needy communities to take the burden off. And I could say that being from Pinewood, you know, Pinewood must be included, and one in Grand Bahama. So there are things that we are doing in terms of employment, in terms of trying to satisfy our internal customers, because I have to send this out to the workers of social services. Many of them are serving the public while needing services themselves.
Yes.
This is the reality. So they are dealing with this every day, and they are going home to situations because it's not a high-paying job.
No.
So imagine that person who comes in, and they're dealing with their own, and we have that person who's just building up, and if they've seen 20 persons for the day, all saying the same thing, and there is no excuse. We have to be sympathetic, we have to be empathetic, but let's also be fair. We can't hold people to different standards that we don't want to be held to ourselves.
Right.
And so from this point, the team there, they're very committed, very passionate, and we'd like to roll out a social services that in the public's eye would be more sympathetic and passionate while providing the services that the public needs. Because we want to take you from being dependent to self-sufficient and empowered, while also acknowledging that there will be people who would need help from time to time. It's not a permanent position for social services to take care of you, but to put you in a position where you could take care of yourself and your family.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You want to break? You want to break? We're done. Or we're wrap. Okay. Okay, so we're going to wrap here. But I want to say thank you, both ministers, for the vision and understanding of what we're facing. And I believe that if we work hard at it with all of these technical expertise in this room and who are not here, that we will be able to address so many of the issues that are facing our country and be able to provide a better Bahamas for people to live in. Thank you so much for watching, and of course expect to see action going forward. You'll see more of these shows as we try to address the issues that are plaguing our country to build a better Bahamas. On behalf of the entire team here at Social Services, Information and Broadcasting, and of course the nation's leader at ZNS, I'm Clint Watson. Thanks for watching. Good night. Good job.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Caribbean Passport TV. I am Kenya Sudes-Kamer from Martinique. Bonjour, bel bonjour. Let's explore the beauty, the wonders, the heritage, and the culture of the Caribbean region. We are pleased that we are able to stay in touch with you and each other. There is so much happening in our region this summer. World Cup cricket and the Olympics are just around the corner, and Caribbean Passport will be right there on the boundary and at the finishing line.